start, as I mentioned, from the beginning. So we'll start with our very basics, how to navigate rates and how to find them, what they look like. And then we'll get into a bit more complex setups. And again, we'll finish off by talking about some possibilities that are can be done in QReserve, but that are not sort of built into the system. And we have a powerful tool called sneq, which is our scripting language. And we'll just talk about some of the possibilities that are available with that scripting language. So whether you're charging or not currently in your site, hopefully you'll get some inspiration here, or at least learn the very basics, and you'll be able to dig down further at another time. Okay, so here's what we'll go through in our webinar today. So covering the basics, we'll look at where you actually add or change rates in your site. We'll talk about how to add or change those rates. We have a couple methods of doing it. We can do one by one, and we can also do it bulk. We'll talk about rates by user groups, which is a very common scenario that you'll find if you want to charge different rates for different groups of people. We'll then look at adding a custom rate quote option. And then finally, under our basics, we'll talk about overriding the default tax rate. So we'll go through those. But adding a little bit of complexity, what we are going to look into today is rates that are based on the duration of use of the resource. We'll talk about off-hours rates, automatic invoicing, and then those special cases that I mentioned. We'll talk about scripting and sneq that can be done within QReserve. Okay, and of course, with all of these, if you've been to any of the QU webinars before, we'll talk about things on our slides, and then we'll go into our real-world demo site, and we'll look at what it actually looks like in real life and show you a real example of it. So you'll find these slides, they have a lot of writing on them. Don't worry about that. We don't have to read through all of it, but I have that on there so that when I send you the slide deck at the end, it's a good reminder for you to walk through where you need to go and the steps that you need to take. So trying to be very clear with those. But again, we'll look at it in a real world example on our demo site. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to navigate to rates in your QReserve site. So first step, of course, you have to be an administrator in your site to be able to do this because you need access to that administration menu. So you'll click on that administration and then we'll go into resources. So we can look at them in a couple different places. One, if you know which resource you want to view the rates on or add, then you can just click on that specific resource and open it up. I'll show you in person. We can, again, multi-edit those resources, so we can change multiples at the same time. For existing rates, you can add those to other new resources. And then we can also do that bulk upload that we've looked at in previous QU webinars if you've been here, but I'll show you how to do that as well today. So let's bounce over to our demo site. Just give me a second here. We'll go to our main menu. So here's our lab demo site. So we're going to click on administration and then resources. Okay, oh, I've got a filter on here, so let's take that off. Okay, so here's all of our resources. So if we want to look at a rate for a particular resource, we can click directly on that resource. So let's say, for example, we will look at our automated strainer. So we're going to click on that. And then from there, you're going to go into reservations. And then you'll see rates in that submenu here. So we'll click on that. And we can see here that our automated strainer does indeed have a rate on it. You can scroll down because, as we'll look at a little bit later, there can be multiple rates on a single resource that would all show here in the rate section. So this one has one rate. It's set up as $20 per hour. So it's a nice simple rate. It applies to everybody in this case. We only have the one rate. Okay, let's go back to our resources. And let's look at another one. So let's check out this Dell laptop. So we'll go in reservations and we'll look at rates. And you can see here that our Dell laptop does not have any rates. So you can see that because it's blank and just gives the option to add a rate here. So that's an easy way, if you know, again, the resource that you want to look at, how to find out where it is. Now, if you want to look at multiple resources and find out if they have rates, we'll go back to our resources menu option here. And we can look at the column, first of all. So we can change one of our columns to rates. And then that's going to be an easy way where we can scroll through all of the resources and look to see what the rates are. So that's going to show easily, just a quick glance if you want to see. And you'll notice if they have multiple rates, you'll see multiple entries in that column. If they only have one rate, you'll just see that one rate there. And if they have none, nothing will show. Okay, so it's a really easy way to look at there. Now, let's say we wanted to do a multi-edit and change some of these more than one resource at a time. Again, you'll be familiar with multi-edit if you've watched our other QU webinars, but we'll just click on multi-edit at the top here. And here is where we can then select which resources we want to edit. You can do all of the resources. You can filter some of the resources. You could just select them with the checkboxes, or you could filter, for example, by locations or equipment. So you can sort of pre-filter through these top tabs, or go through and select the ones you'd like. And then in our field, we're going to choose rates. So one thing to be aware of is that if you are going to multi-edit rates, you need to choose a rate that already exists in your system. So we'll go through and set up a rate in a moment, but if you already have one set up on a resource and you just want to copy that over to similar resources that are going to have that same rate, that's what you'll need to do. So you can click on your add rate, and the pop-up menu will show you all the existing rates that are in your site. And you can just pick that and then apply it. Or you can also remove with this multi-edit tool. If you have a number that you've done and you want to remove that rate, choose it and then switch this to remove and then apply your changes. I'm not going to actually apply these changes here because I didn't look very carefully at them. So we'll unselect all our resources, but just know that the power of multi-editing is available to you in this resources tab. Okay, the other place that we can find our rates if we want to look at multiples is if we are in that administration resources, you'll see here that we have a submenu rates right underneath. So I can click on that. Now, this is where all of the rates are listed. So this is it can be very overwhelming if you have a lot of resources in your site, hundreds and hundreds of resources, and especially if they have multiple rates per resource, it's a lot to look at, but it can be very convenient if you want to see everything in one spot. So right now they're all collapsed, but we can look at all of the details. If I want to look at one resource, I can just click expand right beside it, and you'll see here it opens up that similar window, just like we saw in the individual resource profile. Or I can click on expand all at the side, and that's going to expand everything down. So you can see here, it's a lot to look at. Okay, so, and then collapse it back here. Okay, now from here, you'll notice that we also have up at the top our handy upload and download buttons that you may have seen before, again, at our other QU webinars, and that is for our bulk uploading and downloading feature. So let's go back to our slide and talk about that briefly. So bulk uploading rates is a really handy and convenient feature for you to be able to do multiple rates on multiple resources at the same time. So you're not having to go one by one and create those rates in the site. If you've had a chance to use the bulk upload to bulk upload your resources or bulk upload users, it works in a very similar fashion to that, except we're going to be doing rates. So in order to get there, as we saw, we're going to go to administration, resources, and that rates submenu. You'll want to start off by clicking download first, and that's going to give you a copy of that CSV template file. And if you have existing rates in your site, it's going to download those too. That'll be very important because if you're going to edit any existing rates that you've got, you'll want to see what information is already there in your site. And there are also some pitfalls that we'll talk about in a moment. So make sure if you have anything in your site, you're going to download that template to begin. You can open up that CSV file in a spreadsheet application, Google Sheets, Excel, add your new rates or modify your existing rates that are there, save it as a CSV, and then you're going to click on that upload, drag and drop your file over, and voila, you have your rates new, added, or modified into your site. So a couple cautions here. As I mentioned, there's some pitfalls. So you want to make sure that when you're creating your rate upload spreadsheet, every different rate has to have its own line. And so, as an example, if you have different user groups, like say an internal and an external user group that are going to have different prices, so different rates for those groups, each one has to be on its own separate line to make sure it uploads correctly. And then if you're going to update your existing rates, so you've downloaded that CSV template, you've opened it up because you have existing rates, but you want to change them. Maybe that your rates change every year. And so you want to make sure that you've got the current pricing. If you're going to do that, make sure you keep the rate ID and the resource ID fields intact. I'm going to show you an example of a downloaded spreadsheet so we can see what it looks like. Okay, so here's an example in this site that we're in, our demo lab site. I've downloaded the CSV file for the rates, and then I've opened it in Google Sheets. That's where I am, like a spreadsheet program. This is what you'll see, or something similar, when you do that. So this first column here is the rate ID, and the second one is the resource ID. So the rate ID is a unique identifier that applies to that rate, that line. And the resource ID is that unique identifier for that specific resource. So if you've done any bulk uploading of resources or users before, you'll be aware that you have to keep those unique ID numbers attached to that spreadsheet, because everyone's done it. So don't worry if you've done it. I've done it. Everyone's done it. If you forget, you delete those and you re-upload, it will actually create new users or new resources or new rates and keep the old ones that you had. So you could end up with duplicates in your site. So by keeping this rate ID and the resource ID, you're making sure that QReserve understands that you're going to update what's already there and not create a new record for it. So you'll see here we have other things. We've got the resource name, the actual rate, the unit, and the basis. So you could say, for example, it's per hour or per day. The description of the rate, which is a free-form field that you can add in yourself. A few things that we'll talk about in a little bit later, whether it requires an account number to book, any user groups that it applies to, time blocks, that we'll talk about those after as well. And we've got some special taxes over here. We'll get into that in a moment too. You can also delete rates using your bulk upload. If it's false, no, we do not want to delete this rate. But if you did want to delete rates and just sort of wipe everything out and start again, you can just change that field to true, and then you're going to be able to bulk upload that. So let's pop over, just make sure everybody's in the webinar. Just give me a moment here. There we go. Got a couple new people in. Hello. Okay, so we're going to bounce over to our lab demo site again and just show you where those buttons are. So again, we've got, we're in administration, resources, rates. Here's our download button right at the top. So if we click that, it's going to download again that CSV template with all of our existing rates. Once we've had a chance to create our new rate records or to edit them and modify them in our spreadsheet, and we've downloaded that as a CSV file, we're then going to click upload. And you'll see there's a spot here to drag that file. You'll be able to drag that over, and once that's there, it will give you a summary and you'll have the chance to import it right there. You'll notice also we do mention here you can delete that rate by changing that delete column that we looked at to yes. And there's a few other tips here that we'll talk about as well. There's the basics of being able to bulk upload and download your rates. Okay, back in our slideshow. So we're going to talk about a very common use case for rates, and this is happens probably in most of our sites that use rates that do bill, and that is rates by user groups. So frequently we'll have our customers that bill for certain resources, different pricing depending on the actual group that they're in. So for example, you may have an internal rate for users who are within your organization, but then you may have a more expensive external rate for users that are outside of your organization. So that's really easy to define in QReserve. So we'll do an example of that on one of our resources, but we'll just talk about this quickly first. So we're going to go to that same place. We're going to go to administration, resources, and then rates. We're going to find, or we can go directly to the resource. We've talked about two different places to find it, but we'll look at that. You'll click add the resource rate. Select that resource that it's going to apply to if you haven't already, if you're not in that resource. And then you're going to choose which user group it's going to apply to. Remember, we need to create a new rate for every group. So if you have two groups, we'll have to create two rates to make sure it's clear. You can add a description and your price along with the units. So you might want to choose to bill per hour or per sample or per day. And then you'll repeat that again for all the user groups for your resource. So in our case, in our example, we'll set up two. We'll have that internal and external rates. Again, a couple things just to note here. You want to make sure that your users are actually added to those groups for the rates to approve or apply correctly. So if you have an internal and an external rate group, you need to make sure that your users are added to an internal or an external group. Sounds obvious, but it's a big thing. You've got to make sure they're actually in the group. And then also, if you have a resource that does have rates, but there are some users who will not be charged, so they'll be free, make sure you're creating a $0 rate. So otherwise, they're going to end up slotting into one of those groups that you've already set up, right? So just a little thing here. Let's bounce over to our lab site, and we'll take a look. So we're going to be in here in our resources. Let's go to our resources. And because I know which resource I'm going to create the rate for, I'm going to just filter through it and go directly into that resource. So I'm going to pick our Dell laptop. As you can see here, we had our rate column here, and we don't have any rate attached to it yet. So I'm starting fresh on the Dell laptop. So I'm going to click into that resource and then go to reservations and then into rates. So I'm going to directly access this resources rates section. And then I'm going to click add rate up here. And so we're going to get this little window that opens up. And you'll see it has all the various options that I need. I'm going to start off really simple to start. We're just going to create a rate that's $20. I'm going to say that this is for internal users. You can call that whatever you'd like. It's a free-form text field. Now we have to choose our basis and our unit. So is this going to be charged per unit, per reservation? I'm going to say it's per unit, and I'm going to say per day. So my Dell laptop is going to be going out a day at a time or in day increments. So that's nice and easy there. So I've said it's internal. Now I need to make sure I'm selecting my group that it's going to belong to. So make sure you have your user group already set up ahead of time. I have here a member internal user group. So that's the one I'm going to choose. So now this rate is going to apply to the internal group. It's going to be $20 per day. Okay. Now that only takes care of that one group, right? I haven't taken care of the other external group yet. So now what I need to do is add another rate. This one, I'm going to say it applies to my external members. And then I'm going to say that maybe it's $50. Okay, I'm going to label it for external users so it's very clear. And then I'm going to put that also per day. So now I've got two rate groups here set up. I'm saying we have member internal and member external, two different prices per day on that laptop. So we can go back and see what that looks like. Let's go into our main menu. And we'll open up that laptop. Let's make a reservation. Here. Okay, so now one thing that you might see as interesting here is I did have my rate set up per day. However, in our duration, it's an hour. There are other settings that I can show you where we'll look at how to change that so that it matches. So for example, you might want to say you can only book it by the day. You can't book it by the hour. Or you could leave it as you can book as many hours as you like, but you're going to get charged for a day at a time. So right now, I haven't changed that yet. We'll look at that a little bit later. But you'll see here that my rate is showing up as $20 per day because I'm, as this user here, I'm in the internal user group. Okay. It will also show the total at the bottom here. Okay, so now we can see that our Dell laptop has rates, and they are separated out by user group. Let's take a look at another option that we can add, and that's our custom quote option. So you may have resources that are a little more complex. For example, you might have a request that comes in, a service that you're performing, and maybe it's a little bit more complicated. It's not always the same price. So it might depend on different factors that are selected by your customer. So in these cases, what happens is when the customer books this resource, there'll be a rate or custom rate quote will show up in the rate field. And what that does is triggers a notification to our site administrators or moderators to let them set the rate directly from their dashboard if you've got that approver put on that too. So with those specific resources, you want to add the custom quote option. And then we suggest a best practice would be to add an approver onto that resource to make sure that they're getting notifications if someone has submitted a custom rate quote request on that. And then that will pop up on your dashboard. If you have access to that as an administrator or a moderator, then you'll be able to change the actual pricing on that once you've figured out what that would be. And that will update that reservation with that custom quote. So used, I'd say a fair amount when we have customers like say labs that are doing complex services, they may have something like this. So it's not always the same price that's going to apply. So let's show you what that will look like in a site. Just give me a second here. Okay, so we're in our lab demo site again. Let's go into our Dell laptop. We're going to go into our rates again. So again, reservations or requests, if you're in a request, and then rates. And if we scroll down, that's where we're going to find the custom rate quote option available. So right now it's toggled to no. I'm going to put it on yes. And remember that throughout the QReserve sites, you've got these little question marks that are beside all the fields. You can just click on that and it's going to expand to give you a reminder of what this field does. So if you're not quite sure, don't forget, click that question mark and you'll get an update. Now, you also have the choice if you'd like to decide what the custom rate quote default basis and unit will be. So for example, you can say again, is it per unit or per reservation? Is the default unit per hour, per day, per sample? So you can have that again indicated. So for example, I could say it's per day, per unit. So it's going to be quoting per day. And then the other one that you can adjust for that custom rate quote is, does it require an account number? So you can toggle that on yes or no. And again, we can click our question mark. And again, that is telling you that a user has to provide an account number if they were going to request a custom rate quote option. So you might not have that always set as a requirement on your resources that they have to provide an account number, but maybe for custom quotes, you do want to make sure you're asking for that. So that's something that you can toggle on here. So now we've toggled on that custom rate quote option. Let's go back and look at our Dell laptop. This, and you'll see here, hopefully it shows, yep, it shows our menu, that we have the ability to request a price quote. So that's going to show up in your menu now. Okay. If you have users that don't have any rates available to them, then that's the only thing that's going to show up is request price quote. So that kind of covers your bases there if they don't have a rate that's going to show up to them. Okay, and with our basics that we're discussing here, we're going to look at one more thing, and that is tax rates. And so you have an existing site-wide default tax rate that you can add to your site. So in your site settings, you can say, this is the tax rate that's default for the entire site. But what if you want a special tax rate for just some resources? So there could be use cases for this. For example, you may have user groups. You might have one user group that needs to get charged a certain tax, like HST, but 0% tax for nonprofit groups. That would be a common use case. And so in those instances, we can define the tax rate per rate. So that can be done in the rates. Let me show you an example of that in our download template that we had. So remember that this is the download template that I had for the site existing already. So if I scroll over here, you'll see here I have a couple columns, tax code and tax rate. So these applied to our resource cell culture room. So the cell culture room, we can see, has an internal rate and an external rate set up already. And in this case, the tax code is a defined, that's defined by you internally. So you may have your own tax codes that you already use internally. You can just copy them in. It's a free-form text field, or you can call them whatever you like. And then the tax rate is actually the amount of tax. So in this case, we're saying that in that cell culture room, the tax rate for the internal users is 0, where the tax rate for the external users is 13%. So that's where we're defining that in our upload spreadsheet. And let me show you what that looks like in the site. Okay. So if we look at our cell culture room, we'll go into reservations and rates. Here's our rates laid out here. So here's our external. And you can see here under our taxes and accounting section, we have that tax code. So this is just their internal tax code that they've used is S9, and it's 13%. This is going to override that site-wide tax that you have set. So if your regular tax rate is 8%, this is going to be 13%. And conversely, our internal members, we have it set up as a 0% tax rate. Again, that will override your site default that's set up here. Okay. The other thing to note is that your tax rate shows up on the invoice itself. It's not going to show up on the reservations when they're made. It's going to show up at the invoicing level. So you don't worry if you don't see it popping up. If you're creating these in your site, again, invoicing is where these will show up. Okay, so that takes us to the end of our basics for rates before we dig in a little bit further. Does anybody have any questions up to this point? Hopefully fairly basic, should all make sense here. Feel free to go through and explore in your own sites. Let me just do a quick check of our chat here. Okay, great. I don't see any questions at the moment, so let's forge on. So getting a little bit more complex here, we have, enough one. Okay, so we have rate duration. So you may not have realized that you can easily configure rates that are different based on the length of your resource use. So for example, you may say that if you use it up to a certain amount of time, it's more expensive, but if you're going to use it for a longer period of time, now the rate drops. So you might say it's $50 an hour for the first 3 hours, but if you use it more than 3 hours, it goes to $40 an hour. So you're giving a discount based on how long that resource is used for. It's a pretty common use case as well. So it's quite easy to set up in QReserve. So we'll do an example as well, but let's just talk about it here so you understand the steps. So you're going to go back to that same spot, administration, resources, and rates. could select the resources that you'd like to edit and expand those rates. So you want that full window that we're seeing that has all of the options in it. You'll see a button that says Edit Rate Time Options. So we're going to click on that. And then we have two tabs there. The one we want for this particular example is durations. So now this is where you indicate when you want that new rate to apply. So again, example, your rate is $50 an hour, but if they book it for more than 4 hours, it goes to $30 an hour. To set it up, we're going to create in our durations, the first rate, $50 an hour, a minimum duration of none, so 0, up to 3 hours and 59 minutes. So we want, how long does that go for, that particular level? Then we're going to create another rate, a second one that says $30 an hour. And we're going to say, okay, now that one, the minimum duration is 4 hours and maybe it's unlimited. So now we've got our line there. So we say under 4 hours, 50, over 4 hours, 30. And you can see how this can be really useful, and you can set up multiple tiers. So maybe you have 3 rates. You've got up to a certain amount of time, 0 minimum up to that time. The next tier, a minute over that limit to another limit. And then your third tier, a minute over that to unlimited. So you can have those tiers set up, and that will automatically calculate in QReserve. So you're not having to apply discounts or go into invoices and make any revisions to them after it's already been billed. Just let the system do the work for you. So let's go take a look at one in a site. So we'll do one with two tiers. So let's go into our resources, and let's go back to that Dell laptop that we had. Okay, so we're going to go into our rates. And so here we have, as you can see, the rate, it's expanded here. If you see it as collapsed, we'll just have that small summary. We want to just make sure we expand it, okay? And then you'll see here is our edit rate time options. So I'm going to click on that. Oops, sorry, I'm not showing you the right tab. There we go. So let me back up for a moment so make sure everyone can see that. So I'm in my Dell laptop. I went to reservations and rates. Okay. If your rates are collapsed, again, you'll just see that summary. So you just need to hit expand on the left here. That's going to bring up all of the options. And edit rate time options is right down here at the bottom right. Okay, if you click that, we'll get this new window here. So we have 2 tabs, weekly blocks and durations. In this case, we want durations. Okay, so now we're saying, okay, with this rate that I've set up, which is external users for this Dell laptop, and it's telling you right at the time here which rate you're in, what do I want that duration to be? So I want to say the minimum duration to get $50 an hour is none, so it doesn't matter when you start. And then the maximum duration is going to be, let's say 3 days. Mine is a daily rate. So you can see we have days, hours, and minutes available in this dropdown. So I'm going to say 3 days. And you can restrict the rate to increments. So you can say the rate applies days, hours, minutes. I'm just going to leave this alone for the moment. Okay, so now I've said this particular rate is now applicable to 0 to 3 days worth of time. And I'm going to close. So that's now set up. But now I need to have another rate, right? Because now I need to say, what are they going to get charged if it's more than 3 days? So now I'm going to add a rate, which is right here at the bottom. I'm going to say it's the same group, it's external members. And I'm going to say, let's say their discount is now going to be $30. And let's give it a good name. We'll call it over 3 days because we want to make sure it's really clear, right? And I'm going to edit this one to say external users under 3 days because I want to make sure that if someone else comes and looks, or if I'm looking, that I understand what it is and it's very clear. My units, I'm going to say it's per day. Okay, and now I'm going to go right back into that edit rate time options for this one and durations. And now for this one, I have to say, well, the minimum duration, I now have a minimum, right? Because it has to be over 3 days. So I'm going to say 3 days and 1 minute, just to make sure it's really close. So anything over 3 days now is going to be this new rate. And then I'm not going to put a maximum because I only have 2 durations that I'm going to use for this particular one. So it's under and it's over 3 days. And that's it. So I'm going to close that. And now when I see my rates, we have an external rate for under 3 days, which is going to be $50 per hour. And I have an external rate, external users, which is going to be $30 if they are over 3 days. So if you want to see what that looks like in practice, let's go and check out our Dell laptop. Okay, let's just go pick a day. So in this case, because I'm logged in as an admin and I'm not in the external group, I'm just going to force the administrator option so that you guys can see what it looks like. So when I force the admin, it allows me to pick rates, as you can see. So let's just pick under 3 days. I just want to show you that if I'm going to say here, and let's see, let's just say here, and then it's going to show me here what the rate is, the total. So it's $150 because I'm looking at $50 per hour. Thank you. Okay, and then you can see here it tells you the duration too, so I can be extra sure how long this is. Now let's make it very clear. I am going to have to force this because I'm not in the right group, but if I were in the correct group, it would automatically calculate that it's going to be over 3 days, and you'll see here now my rate is applicable for the over 3 days. For users who are in the correct group, so if I have a user that's booking this Dell laptop and they're in the external user group, that's going to automatically calculate for them. They're not going to have to go and pick that. Because I'm an administrator in the site, I have to override it because I have multiple rate choices available to me. But your users will have a very easy and clear experience with those durations set up in your site. Okay. Do we have any questions about durations? It's a pretty easy thing, but it can be very powerful and really helpful to use in your site. Okay, let's look at our next one, which is off hours rate. So this can be really helpful in a organization that might have access to, say, room spaces or equipment that's after hours, like you're not your normal on-peak time, or when it's slower, and you have slower, say, the weekends, where people will get a discounted rate or a different rate because they're not going during your peak hours. And so that's another easy thing that we can set up for specifically in QReserve. So let's look at that, but first we'll just talk very quickly about that. So we have in that same rate, like expanded rate window that we were looking at under our resource, you'll see that there's a button that you can toggle on that says off hours rate. So if that's toggled off, which is the default, you're just going to have that one rate that you've created. It doesn't matter what hours it's in, as long as the resource can be booked, then it's going to apply. But now if we want to add that off hours rate, we're going to toggle the button on, number one. Then the second step is we're going to add the off hours rate pricing, which is immediately below that button. So it'll open up a spot where you can then indicate what that off hours price is going to be. Then you're going to edit the rate time options. That same one we were just in, it will open up, and we're going to look at that time option, and then we can define our weekly blocks. What will happen, and this is the great part about this, is if your user makes a reservation that overlaps peak hours and off hours, it will actually blend the rates together to make sure that the charge is appropriate. We'll look through a real example of that after we set this up, but just as an example, if you are open 9 till 5, but you allow people to access certain resources after 5 p.m., and you have someone that books it from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., that's 1 hour of peak time and 1 hour of off time, it's actually going to blend those rates together. So you'll get 1 hour charged at peak time, 1 hour charged at off rate time. So it's a really powerful and easy way to get this set up. So let's take a look again at our lab demo site. And I'm going to show you, first of all, something that's already set up so we can see. Okay, so our cell culture room, I believe we already have. Okay, so here we have, this is our cell culture room. We're looking at an external member rate. And you can see here, the toggle for off hours rate has been toggled on. And then underneath it's indicated what that off hours rate is. So the regular rate is $60 per hour. Now our off hours rate is $40 per hour. And if I go look at the edit rate time options screen, the first tab now is the one I want to look at, which is the weekly blocks. So what we define here is what time is your rate not available. So sounds a little weird at first. You'll wrap your brain around it, but remember, we're looking at the regular rate is $60 an hour. When do we not want 60 hours or $60 per hour to apply, which is our regular hours, right? So we can apply that, and then we'll say the other way to think about it is when should the off hours rate apply. So we can set our blocks here. You can see this one's already been blocked. You can also adjust this to 15-minute granularity slots if half an hour is too big. Okay, so we'll close that. So again, you can see how that's set up there. Let's go and do a setup of a resource. So I'm going to pick something different that we haven't played around with yet. So let's look at this workstation. So right now, this workstation has a very simple rate setup. It's got all users, $50 per hour. That's pretty easy. So let's say now that we want, just change that for a second. We want all of our users to have an off hours rate. So I'm going to toggle that on. And then it's giving me a caution. I don't have any times defined. That's fine. We're going to do that in a moment, but it's just reminding us. So let's tell it what our off hour rate is going to be. Maybe it's half price. It's $25 off hours. And now we need to define our times. So when you're defining times, you might have done this already when you've set up your resources and you're defining the times that they're available to be booked at. It's very much the same thing. So let's just say, if you see here, for example, Saturday and Sunday are completely open. If I click invert, it's just going to apply to all day. So let's do that. And then the easy way to do this is just to pick, say, like 9 to 5. It's going to pop up a window so you can confirm, create, and then I invert, right? So I want anything outside of that. So I'm just going to set up this for now, pretend it's finished. We'll just make a booking on one of these days so you can see. Okay, so we've got that set up now. So let's go look and see at our imaging workstation. So let's make a reservation on Monday. I'm going to toggle off my admin options again. So let's make it from, say, 4 to 5. Okay, so I've booked this from 4 to 5 p.m. on peak hours, and you'll see here it's $50. Okay, we'll make the same day. Let's make it 5 to 6 p.m. And you'll see here it's now $25. So it's automatically calculated that because I'm in that off-peak time, right? But here's the great part. Let's go and book that from 4 to 6. So what we're expecting to see is a blend of those two rates, right? I'm going to get 1 hour at 50, 1 hour at 25. And you can see here that is exactly what's happened. I've got my blended rate of $75. So really, really easy to set up there and a great option for you. It could take a lot of administrative work off of you. Okay, almost at the end. We've got a couple more small things to talk about. Automatic invoicing. So this is a neat feature that you might not have realized that we have available in QReserve, but once you're in your resource, in your rates, you have the ability to toggle on automatic invoicing. And what that means is that if someone books this particular resource at this particular rate, it's going to automatically invoice them for it, like right after they've made the booking. So this can be handy. You might have like external users that you want to be invoiced right away for it. You don't want to wait till the end of your monthly billing for your internal users. So you can do that. Let me show you. It's very, very easy to toggle that on. So let's go back. We'll look at that workstation resource again. We're already in there. So we're going to go to reservations and rates. Oh, sorry, it's right here. So, oops, that's not it. Put that back on. Invoice automatically. Okay, so it's up in here. This again just toggles on that switch to invoice automatically. Let me show you quickly on the calendar, if you've got a user booking it, what that looks like, because they're going to see something a little bit different to make sure that they understand what's going on here. So it doesn't matter, I'll just pick a day. Okay, so we've got our reservation. Let's just say this is the one we're going to do. When I hit reserve, you'll see here now, it's going to pop up this window. Are you sure? Because you're going to be invoiced immediately if it's a non-zero value. Do you wish to continue? So this is a warning that your users are going to get just to be sure what's happening here, because they are going to get that invoice right away. So this can be, again, a really handy tool if you've got some groups that you want to be invoiced right away on some certain resources, but not others. Really easy to set up. So let me cancel this because we have one other really interesting option that goes along with this one. I'm going to go back into that resource and show you into that workstation, reservations and rates. And that was this toggle down here. I toggled it off because I wanted to show you first what it looked like with just the invoice. But we have this interesting button, auto cancel automatically invoiced, but unpaid reservations. So let's say that you have users that book. You want them to be invoiced automatically, and you also want them to pay right away. And if they don't pay, you're going to cancel that reservation. So it's a pretty quick sort of process. You can specify how long they're going to have to pay that booking before it gets canceled. So let me toggle it on. I'll just show you how that looks. So we're going to toggle that, and you can see here, how long do you want to give people before that reservation gets canceled? So there's a few things that happen here. One, they'll be notified, and I'll show you a reservation so you can see what it looks like. But they'll get that notification that they're getting invoiced and they have a certain amount of time to pay, and then the countdown starts. It will hold that reservation in the calendar after they create the reservation. It will hold it in the calendar so that other people can't book on top of it while this is pending. And then after this time is elapsed, it cancels it, and then that frees the calendar up for someone else to book that rate or that resource on top of them. So now that this is toggled on, and we've got the 10 minutes, let's go take a look at what it looks like. And I'm just going to show you what the warning, sort of the alert is for that person. We won't wait the 10 minutes. You don't have to wait that long. And we'll just show you what it looks like. So we're going to make our reservation. Okay, we'll just make it for this time. And now look at this warning we've got. It's a bit more specific. So now it says, are you sure? Because your request will be held for 10 minutes and canceled if payment has not been completed. Do you wish to continue? Yes or no? So, of course, this is handy if you've got the credit card integration set up in your site, because obviously people will need a method to pay within that 10 minutes. So you'll want to have that set up too. That's a bit more advanced than this particular webinar, but we do have that ability. So let me cancel that. I won't make this booking, but you can see what that looks like. Okay, and then finally, our next and last topic is special cases. So there are all sorts of interesting special cases for billing in QReserve that we can't accommodate with these fields that I've shown you, because they're very they're very unique. So they could be very specific to a certain organization. And so it's not something that we have built in for toggles, for example, or to be added in as a rate. However, we do have our scripting language, sneq, which you may be familiar with, where you can actually write scripts to handle these specific and unusual cases in your site. So I've collected, these are actual real world examples from some of our customers. So I put a few of them here to give you an idea of the kind of things that we can accommodate with rates and pricing in our sites. So for example, we have a customer whose users in a certain group receive 150 free hours on a microscope per year. If they go above 150 hours, they get charged an hourly rate on top of that. And it applies to the group. So there might be several of them in this group, and any of the use goes towards that 150 free hours. And then after that, they get billed. So that's, a very specific case. We can accommodate that with our scripting. Users with multiple grant codes or account numbers can be charged different rates based on the account number prefix. So that's kind of an interesting one too. You would have a naming convention internal to you. So you might say these ones start with an A and these ones start with a B. And if it starts with an A, they get charged that rate. And if it starts with a B, they get charged this different rate over here. Again, unique case, and you can self-define that, but we can accommodate that. We have a customer whose rates for some resources are calculated using a logarithmic formula based on usage duration. So we went through the duration, and as you saw, I was able to say, okay, up to 3 days and over 3 days, but I do not have anywhere that I can put a logarithmic calculation in there. And so that needs to be handled through scripting. We have a customer who has a rule that after 60 hours of usage in a month on one resource, they get a 40% discount. And not something that you're going to find in those toggles or those uploads, but we can accommodate it with a script. So I'll just quickly show you where those are located in your site. You may not have them there, so yours might be empty, but if you look there, you can see if there are any scripts that are set up in your site. We do have documentation for our sneq language. It's very similar to Python. There are some differences, but it's similar to that. So if you have any Python programmers at your organization, they may find this fairly easy to pick up. We also have LLM skills. For example, if you use Gemini, we've got a Gemini gem, which will actually be able to help you write scripts if you need assistance with that. I've added the link to the scripting documentation here in our slides too. So when I send you the slide deck, you'll be able to find that easily. So let me just go into our site. So where we go is that administration resources, and then we have a subcategory for scripts. So I'll show you that. So here's our site. We're going to go into administration and resources, and then you'll just see tucked in here in our submenu, we have scripts. So there are several types of scripts that can be used in your site, but we're, in this instance, are looking at rate. So here in our demo site are some examples of scripts that we have. You're able to name your script whatever you'd like and add a description. We highly recommend that you use a very descriptive name and a specific description so that other people who are in your site, your other administrators, know exactly what it's for. Because once you've written the scripts, you then attach the scripts to your resources, and that allows the scripts to run on those resources. So you can see here we have that annual 150-hour free usage cap for microscope reservations, which is shared by members. There's a discount code and promotional day checker script. Matching reservation rate to the user's selected account number or funding source. 12-hour monthly usage cap for shared amenity space reservations. Multi-tiered duration-based pricing with cumulative discounts. So you can see these are getting kind of complicated here. So these ones can all be handled with scripting. I'm not going to write any of that now, but we do have the ability for you to look into that further. So again, we've got those LLM skills that can help you. We're also, of course, available if you need any custom work done, you can contact us and we can scope that out for you as well if you do need more assistance with that. All right, that takes us to the end of our QU201 rates webinar. In the slide deck here, I've also provided help resources. So we've got our knowledge base, demo videos, our link to our help desk tickets, and of course, you can always email us at any time. We're happy to assist. And if you have any other suggestions for QUniversity webinars, we'd love to include it in a future session. Feel free to contact us. You can email me directly because I will send out the slide deck and to all of our attendees, and we'll also have the recording up on our website in the next few days to a week tops. So you'll be able to rewatch this at any time that you'd like. And we're happy to take suggestions for more webinars. So thanks everyone for attending.